Hello! Coming up on the Mum Show today, I am joined by Emma and Claire as we talk about how to effectively discipline our children. So make yourselves comfortable, grab a cup of tea and let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Mum Show. My name's Marina, I am your host and I'm joined once again by Pastor Claire Hooper and child therapist Emma Brown.
Hello.
And today we are going to talk about that very practical, necessary tool of discipline. How can we discipline our kids in a way that makes them cultivate a strong moral compass and be able to discipline themselves for the later years in life? There you go. So answers on postcard.
I love this topic.
It's huge.
I know, it's so priceless to know how to discipline your kids well.
Yeah, and in fact, I think it's one of those things that feels really scary when you first start as a parent, partly because discipline's such a fragile, beautiful child. I didn't think my child could do anything wrong when they were tiny. You know, when they're a baby, you're like,
I know.
You will be perfect.
And you think you're doing it all wrong when they're little, because actually I can't work it out, I don't know what you need, I don't know what you want, will you just speak to me?
Yeah, completely. But we have to, don't we? We have to find that place of our own discipline strategy, discipline style. I think for me, the big thing in my parenting was to find a strategy that worked for me. And that wasn't like, this is how I'm going to respond to every situation.
Yeah.
And so actually, I guess it's not a strategy. I guess it was a philosophy.
Yeah, philosophy.
That's a better way of looking at it. Yes.
And
Something you feel comfortable with, right?
Yeah, exactly. What am I trying to achieve? How am I going to try and do this?
Yeah.
And what does that need to look like in different situations? Because we can't actually just have like this is my 3-step rule for discipline, can we?
Absolutely not. But I do think that we are hugely influenced by how we were disciplined ourselves. I think that plays a huge part. Sometimes I think we automatically repeat so the kind of discipline almost is like an automatic response. And you know, when you kind of, I've heard it a few times where I've said something, I've thought, oh my goodness, that was my mother. That was my mother's voice. That's exactly how, and I vowed I would never speak to my children like that. And yet I've done it. So sometimes it's really automatic, isn't it? It just flows through us because we've internalised it. And other times we actually think, do you know what? I had a really harsh discipline. You know, I had kind of an experience of harsh and critical discipline techniques, and I want to do it completely different.
Yeah.
But I think there's a danger of going the other way. And I think
absolutely.
you know, it feels like it is on a bit of a continuum, doesn't it? The kind of the philosophy that we kind of take on in our discipline techniques. We've got the harsh, kind of very do as I say discipline at one end of the scale, and then we've got the very permissive, you know, kind of maybe letting things go too much or being too passive in our techniques at the other side. And I think both can create problems.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Did either of you find it a struggle, like, working out with your husbands? Because I know that we did. We have very different styles, and so bringing the discipline styles together. Did you find that?
And do you think, Claire, that was because of your upbringing, both for you and Matt?
Yeah, I'd have thought so. Well, yeah, definitely their approach, Matt's mum and dad's approach was very different than my. Well, I had a blended family. I had 4 parents at one point, and so they all did it very differently.
Yeah, that's a lot
so, and then, and you work your way through that. You learn, you know, in coping methods, you learn how to not get on. You learn to dodge and dive things really easily. And so, but yeah, Matt had a really lovely upbringing with a mum and a dad who were there all the time, and so it was very different. Yeah.
But how did you kind of talk about that? Did you wait until it happened, or was it something you spoke about before you were married, before you had children?
Our first child was very compliant, so we didn't bump into it really until we had a second.
One of those.
He was the.
Never get one of those.
He was the. All you had to say to him was and he would remove his hand. Honestly, like, you know, he's just got a really, like, by his nature, he's very good at that. He's very good at, like, self-control in those areas. But yeah, so we didn't bump into it until a few years later with our second child, and then we realised, oh, like, we really think differently about this. I'm much more coach, like, you know, want to work them through the coach style of discipline, and Matt's more wants to be, I suppose, respected in a more authority style of discipline. So yeah, we did. What about you?
I don't think it was with my husband, because I think that he was really keen to see what I was going to do and allow that to pave the way in that sense. And I come from a really big family, and we've got lots of sisters, and we're all doing kids, and my mum is a very mum. Do you know? I don't know even what I mean by that, but she's very involved with us and, you know, very communicative and that sort of thing. So I think that he was just kind of like, you've got this, whatever you say goes. But I found the biggest influence, or the biggest one to navigate, wasn't Dominic, but it was the wider world. And it was, because I'm quite sensitive to people's body postures, to people's reactions. I read people really quickly. We always say we're overloaded with empathy, don't we, you and me? Because it's just kind of like, you know, and I've always been very attuned to what's happening with people. And so what I found the biggest struggle would be if one of my children did something that I would think wasn't inappropriate or fun, and other people would go,
Yes, very.
And then all of a sudden I would react in my discipline, and I'd be like, no, you mustn't do that. But because I didn't really understand why they shouldn't, I wouldn't discipline correctly, I wouldn't explain anything. And then pressure would start to build up, because I'm living this relationship through what I can see is happening. And I actually had, in the early days, I had some people around me that were very critical, very, you know, prophet of doom. You know, if your kids aren't like this by the age of 2, they're going to grow up and be... And I actually had to step away from those people, and I had to put some really strong boundaries in place and say to myself, do you know what? This is about your relationship with your child and nothing to do with anybody else. And sometimes on the outside, it looks messy, and you might think badly of my child, and you might think badly of me, but you aren't the important one. My child is the important one. And I think for me, that was the biggest thing to have to push through. It wasn't within the family, it was actually random people that make no difference.
Absolutely. And I guess when you're kind of parenting or disciplining in response to the outside world, you're not doing it from an authentic place.
Absolutely.
And children will pick up on that, and they'll be like, really, mummy? I can do this at home, but I can't do this now.
It's not consistent, because...
And
it's interesting, because I think my style of parenting worked really well when the children were young, because I had got that coach style. But when they became very independent, and we've grown independent thinkers, that's what we want, when it came to that point, I didn't know what to do with that, because I could no longer get alongside them and let's work this through. And so then Matt's style has come into a reel of its own in the style of discipline that he's got. I'm like, this works really well. But I wouldn't have necessarily found that. I think I would have not had him in my world bringing a different style. I don't know how I would have got through the teenage years.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting having, you know, watching our children develop, and we kind of adapt and learn and be flexible with our approaches too, don't we? It's like you were saying, I wanted to have a strategy, but sometimes that one strategy might not, it might work at that point, but it might not work in a different situation.
And with different children, because it's like you were saying with your oldest two. I remember my little one, because with my daughter, if I was to say to her, listen, sweetheart, I just think that we just need to, and maybe, and you know, we could just, then she would just be like, I'm not listening to a thing. And I have to go, Lilia, okay, let's talk serious now. Here's what's going to need to happen, okay? You good with that? You know, and we have to have that strong conversation. She needs a strong tone of voice. If I said to my son, Ruben, listen, it is going to be bedtime and you are going to go to bed, he'd fall to pieces. You know, he'd just be like, you hate me, you hate me. And I remember him saying to me one day, don't talk of me like that, my not Lily up.
No, it's true, it's a different,
and I realised then, I thought, I have to speak to you differently. I have to go, okay, sweetheart, we're going to go to bed now, we're going to 2 minutes, okay, we're going to go to bed. And I can't interact with them. And actually I've had to process that with them.
Yes.
And I've had to say, and I say to them all the time, like they've got such a clear understanding now. I say, I can't, if you want me to parent you the same, we can do that. And they'll both say, nope. No, because they know that it covers everything.
Because we're parenting humans, not robots.
Absolutely, and things can still be fair, and even when we don't treat our children exactly the same, we treat them as individuals, but it can still feel fair.
Absolutely.
Because we're responding to their individual needs, and and it's coming from a place of relationship, isn't it?
And good discipline works out what your motivations are, and actually we all have different internal drivers as well.
Yeah.
So the old term of carrot and stick, there are actually many more motivations in human beings than just am I goal orientated or am I like am I discipline motivated? Actually, they might be neither. So you've just got to work out the drivers and then put in good sort of disciplines that help them realise the consequences of what they've done.
So what we're saying is that in high-pressured, frantic situations, when your child is making poor choices and you have to step in, you need to be flexible, consistent, spontaneous and creative. Just
absolutely.
Simple as that, so we're sorted really then, aren't we?
We could end the episode on that,
really. Yeah, just be super mum. Should we have a listen to our kids?
Definitely.
Yeah. Let's take a look. We'll tune into the kids now.
Okay, kids, action!
Rules are a good thing because they let us know our boundaries. Like, this is a rather obvious one, but don't jump off that cliff.
Rules are a good thing because it teaches people how to be good and not to do silly things.
Like, there's rules like don't cross the road when there's a green light. Otherwise, there's very possibility that you're going to get smashed into. And so, that although it can seem unfair at times, it are for our own safety.
Yes, rules are good. Very good. Rules are really good.
Because
I don't know. Actually,
they teach us what's right and wrong. Really?
Yep.
What happens when you break a rule or when you don't do the right thing?
You probably die or like get hurt. If it's the law, then you would go into prison. But if it's like something that you like don't steal a cake, then you'll probably get left out next time.
You wouldn't make many friends because they know that you can't be trusted to keep your promises.
What do you think discipline means, Anna?
Like, if you break the rules, like, you might go to prison if it's against the rules.
That would be one form of discipline.
Yeah. Discipline means where you get told off for doing something wrong.
What does it feel like to be disciplined?
I usually get really angry and start shouting.
I get really shamefaced and shy, and it can also make me a little bit grouchy, and it can put a little rain cloud over my head, but it will also give me determination not to do it again.
What about you, Anna? How do you feel when you get told off?
I feel cross when I get told off.
Do you think it's okay for your mum and dad to discipline you? And why?
I think it is because it's because they want you to grow up into a nice lady or a horrible lady, so you have friends.
It teaches you what you need to know for life. It's not just a parent saying, yelling at you for stepping out of line. They do it because they love you.
When you grow up, what rules are you going to make in your house?
No screaming, unless, of course, your head's been chopped off.
Or you're dying.
Like, so...
We're drowning.
Yes, but another rule is tidy up after yourself and don't live like a pig. And although that's pretty much what I do, it's because... No,
Are you a pig?
no. And although I'm very messy, I don't really want my children to be.
No rules. No rules?
Yes, you would. Because you have rules in your bedroom.
No, I don't.
Lydia, what rules do you put in place in your bedroom?
Because you always go, Lilia, tidy your room. Lilia, tidy your room. You come in and you go, oh, I just can't be in here right now. I'm all cold.
Oh, that reveals a lot, doesn't it?
Oh, that's
I love that. I don't go, Lily, I tied your room. I go like this. I can't be in here right now. I can't be in here right now. It makes me that angry to go into clutter. Like I just, I physically, my blood boils. We will talk about this in another episode. And the only way I can make sure that I deal with that appropriately is to just go, not right now. Yeah. I'll come back later when I'm in a better frame of mind. So she likes to mock me for that.
And the caveat about the only time you're allowed to scream is if your head gets chopped off.
Oh, that's brilliant, isn't it? It's so good.
I could watch those 3 all day, actually. They're so funny,
brilliant.
aren't they? And such different children. Yeah. But didn't you notice, though, how all 3 of them often came back to the fact that they need rules socially. Yeah. All 3 of them in different ways said, no one's going to talk to you, no one's going to be your friend, nothing good is going to play out for you in your life. We did the normal don't jump off a cliff safety thing, but actually they all understood that rules are a necessary part of, and discipline and understanding that is a necessary part.
Well, Joshua himself said it's about learning skills, didn't he? I think he said it's about our parents teaching us the right way, and that is the absolute. I mean, it's genius. That discipline, disciple means to teach. Yeah. So instead of seeing discipline as a way of kind of punishing our children or making them do what we want them to do, see it as an opportunity to build skills and to teach them skills.
And if you pull that scripture about train a child in the way that they should go, it's not just about faith. Lots of Christians use that, and especially those that have found themselves in a place where maybe their children aren't in faith, and people will say, don't worry, you trained them. And I'm not saying that that won't happen, but the scripture is more than just about faith. It's about life. It's about teaching our children how to live well.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. And there's practical ideas. I mean, I think for me, I think that, like we were saying, there's loads of practical things, and I'd like to move on to that because I think there'll be lots of people that in the moment would find it super helpful if we actually gave them a tool. But I think what you were saying there, Emma, about discipleship, it is that if we keep that in our mind as always the end goal, am I going to teach you here? How can I teach you here? I think for me, it's really interesting that actually my children aren't going to learn if they are in a state of anxiety, if they're angry, if they're completely feeling stressed out or isolated, or like they've been pushed away from me because they're no good, or all of those things. I've really learned with my kids, they need to be in a receptive place of learning. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, to be able to learn, and I've had to study this so much in home educating my kids. If I want them to learn, they need to be at peace, and they need to be relaxed, and they need to want to learn it. Yeah. And I'm wasting my breath talking if they're not in that place.
If a child is feeling dysregulated, so not in control of their emotions, or feeling overwhelmed, like you say, because actually harsh discipline, even though it might get the end result, it triggers, it causes actual changes in our children's brains. Is that right? Yeah, it kind of oversensitizes the rage structure in the brain, or the process of rage and fear as well. All the children in little ways talked about how I feel cross when I get shouted at. And when you're feeling cross and angry, you're not able to listen. You're not able to be receptive. I know we spoke in the last season, didn't we, about connecting to redirecting, and that is really about helping our children get from that red zone into the green zone, up from the downstairs part of their brain into the upstairs, where they can start to kind of slowly think a little bit more, think rationally, hear what we have to say, and in a practical way of how that might look. So if you've got a child who's really lost the plot, there's absolutely, like you say, Marina, no point in kind of telling them what they've done wrong and trying to get them to do something different. They've got to be in a calmer place first. So that's using your right side of your brain, using physical touch if you need to, staying calm, being aware of your own body language, making sure you're in the right frame of mind. Sometimes it involves having some space as well, particularly for older children, so that they can kind of calm themselves down a little bit. And then you can go left brain to left brain, and the left brain is all about problem solving. How can we do things differently? How can we think about that?
You can't do that in the moment, can you? You can't.
And that's the bit where you start teaching them and giving them the tools to govern themselves from the inside, because we can't follow them around. And I need to trust that when I'm going to send you out into the big wide world, or whatever it is that you're going to do, that you've got that within you.
Absolutely.
And actually just chucking on a punishment is not actually going to teach you what you need to pull out within yourself to be able to do that.
The consequences, I always got this idea of using logical consequences with children. So while we feel maybe we're kind of in the moment and when we're really angry about them doing something wrong, we might say, right, that's it, no TV for a week for you. That's
all your
it.
toys are going in the bin now.
Absolutely. That's not logical for a child who's just maybe given a bit of bad attitude, or...
You know exactly what the cost of the punishment is compared to like the...
It's got to see, because otherwise children won't understand. It won't be a learning experience if they don't see, OK, when I do this, this is what happens. And I'm just trying to think of a good example of what a logical consequence might be. I guess for a child who's messing about at bedtime and delaying, I know that's one that's close to my heart, because both of my kids used to do that. Just see how long it can take me to just get up the stairs and do anything that stops it. So a logical consequence of that will be, you know, the longer you take down here, it's going to have an impact on how long we'll have time to read tonight. So that is it's a logical consequence.
But as well, when they grow up, they can start to choose their own consequences a little bit. I went shopping with my daughter, and she'd got cross because she'd only had enough pocket money to buy one and not the set. And I was not going to bail her out, because then there's no point in having pocket money. I'm like, no, the whole point, I'm not giving you pocket money for fun. It's that you are learning to kind of navigate around these finances. So you can choose to get one, or we'll come back another week. But we would gone to the city, and we never do that. So she was like, this is my one chance. You've got to let me have this. You've got to do this, mummy. And I was like, everything within me wants to, but we're not going to. So anyway, when she went to go and give it to the cashier and pay for it, she looked at me, she went, and she put it down on the till, and my blood was just boiling. I was like, you know, when you see your child disrespect somebody like that, I was so disappointed, and I was like, oh my goodness. And I thought, well, I'm not going to embarrass her. I'm just going to wait to see what happens. So she paid for it. We left the shop. I just turned around and I went, gosh, I noticed when you were talking to that cashier, you really slammed what you wanted down on the counter. And she instantly just went, oh. And I said, what do you think that made her feel like? And she said, sad. And I went, oh, we can do better than that. And she went, embarrassed, humiliated by me, really upset, angry maybe. And she just started rolling this off. And I went, oh, gosh, that's not nice, leaving her to feel like that. What do you think needs to happen next? And she went, I'll say sorry, but will you come with me? And she took herself back to the shop. The cashier was busy and absolutely disinterested. And she went to her, I'm sorry that I didn't treat you nicely when I put that down. And the girl just went, all right. And she walked off. And when we came outside of the shop, I just gave her a massive cuddle. I said, I'm so proud of you for choosing to do that. And I think for me, not having to come up with it. I mean, I know you can't do that with a 4-year-old. No. You can't do that when they're tiny, but this transition, it's like you're 9 now, you do know, and you probably, because kids have an amazing sense of justice, don't they? Absolutely. Like they like to keep those scales nice and level, and that, for me, that was quite exciting.
There's a cause and effect of our behaviour, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Actions have consequences, and that's a more powerful lesson sometimes than giving them a punishment. Sometimes what you learn when you accept and see your part that you had to play. And God is like that with us, you know, with this generous Father in heaven who does want to bring correction and guidance to our lives for our good, not for his good. We don't, you know, doesn't make him better by the things that he brings us, and he gives us the Holy Spirit that can live and dwell inside of us, that gives us comfort and helps build our character and gives us directions and helps us to make good decisions. And that is, again, what we're modelling to our children.
And I love that as well with the whole connecting to redirecting. I just think that's the story of Father God. That is the story, isn't it? God sends his son to come down and connect with people. He sends his Holy Spirit today to connect with people. It's like, I'm going to connect you, I'm going to grab hold of you, and then we're going to deal with these issues. And we're going to move on. And actually how we deal with those issues, we're not controlled. He doesn't say, okay, you need to move to the left, you've done this wrong, this needs to get sorted. It's just like, it's that prompting, it's that guidance. But it develops the brain as well, doesn't it, when a child is led that way?
And it also is a bit of a blueprint to how children themselves go on to have relationships with other people, with their peer group, with their partners, later with their own children. It's so important, this process of we call it internalization. So I don't know whether I've got a funny story of my little one when she was tiny, and we did used to use the step. Occasionally, and it didn't really work for her, so I didn't use it for very long, but I did try it out with her, and I remember when she was about 2, kind of putting her on the step and saying, right, you need to stay there for 2 minutes and Mummy's going to come back, and we did all the whole thing. And then about about 5 minutes later, it was all forgotten, and I heard her shouting in the hallway, and she'd gone and got her baby and stuck it on the step and was basically repeating. So that's the process of internalisation, really, in a very real sense. But it's true. If children grow up with that harsh, critical parenting that involves a lot of punishment, what we are teaching them is those roles of victim and bully, of those kind of extreme relationship roles that they internalise, and they'll either then go on to feel like they just have to be passive and a victim, or they'll go the other way and internalise it and become bullies themselves. So we've got to be really, really careful. And then at the other end of the scale, with that, when we feel like we have to be, maybe kind of feel like we need to be more passive with our kids and not be so harsh on them, actually sometimes there's a danger of losing those boundaries. Because children need boundaries.
That's true.
I said it before, they need boundaries to feel safe and secure, and they need boundaries to trust themselves. If they don't have those boundaries in place, they're not going to be able to put them in place for themselves. So it's so important, isn't it, just to kind of get that middle ground.
I want to be practical because I just think I've been there, okay? I've walked this journey of discipline, and it's such a hard one when you're in the middle of it. And there might be some mums watching this feeling tired and exhausted and just going, oh, I've tried everything. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah. Nothing's working. So I want you to imagine your parenting toolkit, bring out your best top tip for parenting. We've just got a couple of minutes left, so we'll just see if we can give some practical advice. Yeah,
so one of the things is the acronym ACT, A-C-T, and I want you to try and, I'll probably put it on the website later for you to have a look at, but the A is acknowledge the feeling, acknowledge the intention behind the behaviour. Always look behind a child's behaviour. Behaviour is communication, so we've got to look at what the child's communicating. So the A is acknowledge it, and that might be, I can see you're really angry with your brother right now. So then the C is communicate the limit. So it is not okay to hit. I can see you're angry with your brother right now, but it's really not okay to hit him. And then the T is target an alternative. So give them something else to use. So the T, so it might be, so I can see you're really angry right now. It is not okay to hit your brother, but why don't me and you go off and find your kind of angry cushion that you can kind of take some of that anger out on, and then we can come back and make things okay with your brother later.
That's good. I've not heard of that one before.
No, I love that. It's good.
Claire?
I think mother like no one's judging. Like, if you know what's best for your children, and actually I think a lot of, you mentioned it earlier on, the impact of everybody else's voices in your world, get to know your child, get to know their drivers and their motivations, and bring good, healthy discipline into the family with great tools like this. But mother like no one's judging, you're the parent.
And I'm going to go, I'm going to say, do not allow your children's behaviour to define who you are. Do not take it on. That's what I'm going to go with.
Absolutely.
I think it's really easy as parents to say, my child is making crazy choices, I'm taking that personally. And for me, the biggest change was when I really decided that your problem is your problem and I will help you through it. But I'm sorry, sunshine, it is still your problem. And I think that just raises problem solvers and it makes them own and take responsibility. And I find it much easier now when I go, that is rubbish, it's also their problem. Just say that to myself, it's their problem. I'm going to help them through it.
Yeah, totally.
But I'm not owning it for myself.
Yeah.
I found helpful. Anyway, I hope that's given you some ideas. As Emma has mentioned, pop over to the Promise Collective website and you can just get some more practical advice and some more ideas and see how you get on with those. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you once again for joining us.
Hello parents, don't forget to say hello We're at forestcollective.co.uk. Bye!